Alright, we are back for part 3 of my Holyfield series, analyzing my 2017 hunt for Holyfield. And just to quickly catch us up to speed from the past 2 episodes, this is a deer I've been hunting for 3 years, so I knew a lot about him. I knew a lot about how to target this buck, where to target him, when to target him. At least I thought I knew those things. So in the first episode, we talked about my preseason work and then my first hunt for him. That first night of the season, I thought I had a chance. Tried that, didn't work out. My second chance I thought was going to be late October, when usually he started moving in daylight again. Tried that, it didn't work out. So that takes us to November. Now on Halloween I did see him for the first time that year, very, very briefly. So I started hunting that section of the property. This was sort of towards the back section of the property. Started focusing on that area now because of that sighting. And I did not have immediate good luck. I ended up still seeing a bunch of does, a bunch of young bucks, kind of like I had been. But fast forward to November 4th, I'm in that same stand that I saw him from on Halloween, and now in the morning I catch him moving through, coming in from the opposite direction but through the exact same spot, passing through. Tried calling to him, that didn't work, he disappeared. So middle of that day I actually pulled out of my tree stand, went and got a new stand, and went and set up a new set right at that location where I'd seen him on the 31st and now on the 4th. And while sitting in that new stand that afternoon, lo and behold, here he comes again following a doe, back on the neighbors and this thick stuff. But unfortunately, just not close enough. And let's take a look at the map here to better understand where and why this is all happening. You can see here on the map the X marks my original stand location, and then this yellow circle, that is where I saw Holyfield, and then you can see the lines marking the 2 different directions that he was traveling. He was going from west to east on the 31st and then east to west on the 4th. I was sitting there at that X spot because this is overlooking a small food plot that I had tucked in tight to some of these doe bedding areas, and my hope was that I could catch Holyfield checking those food plots for does, hopefully moving through the area. And it turns out he was doing that, but he was doing this farther back in the cover. He wasn't coming out to where I could actually get a shot. So as I mentioned, I hung this new stand right where he was moving through within that cover, and that takes us to November 6th, when I went back to hunt that stand again with the right wind. So after he came through following that doe, I was excited, thinking that maybe he would come back through my direction. So I stayed in that stand all through the middle of the day. He didn't end up showing back up underneath me, but I did see a doe bedded on the edge of this opposite side of this field where it came through. And as I'm glassing that doe and looking at her, I noticed a little shimmer of white not too far behind her. And when I looked in there with my binoculars, I saw that Holyfield was actually there, bedded in that cover right with that doe. So now for several hours, I'm watching him bedded there. He occasionally stands up, walks around, checks the doe, sits back down. This happened all the way till maybe 1 or 2:30 in the afternoon, and then he got up and headed off in the opposite direction. So now I was stuck with this dilemma. Do I stay where I'm at right now and hope that he circles back, or do I go and move to a better evening location? I knew that the spot where the most does would be feeding, where they'd been spending the most time in the days leading up to this, was not where I was at right now. It was actually to the far west of this property. There was that food plot system that I'd originally been hunting in late October, and I thought if there was going to be does going anywhere, they'd be headed that direction. And if Holyfield was following a doe, that probably was the best chance of him following a doe out towards a certain area. So I ended up deciding to pull the plug on the current stand I was in and move up to the front. And it was a good thing I did, because not probably an hour after I got set up in that new stand, here comes Holyfield, headed right towards me. And I didn't get any video of this, I wish I had, but he was walking right down the edge like he was going to come into the food plot right to me. I had my bow ready to go. I thought it was going to happen, but at the last second, he stopped and he turned and he paralleled the edge of the cover in the food plot, staying again just out of range where I couldn't get a shot at him, and moved off. So that was the evening of the 6th. Was encouraging, but didn't come together. Now, the next morning, I was going to go back towards those bedding areas that I was focused on, because again, I thought he's following these does around, he's checking for does. That's probably my best spot for a morning location. So I set up in another stand a little bit farther east from where I'd seen him the morning before, but allowing me to hunt downwind of this bedding area without getting winded. And that morning started off pretty good. Saw a lot of does moving through there, some young bucks chasing does around. Actually saw this 3-year-old buck that I've been hoping to see this year, called Survivor, chasing a doe. Things slowed down though in late morning, which got to about midday, around 11 o'clock. Hadn't seen anything in a couple hours. So I remember, I stood up to kind of stretch. I was looking off to my south, and I had my phone out, and I started looking at a book, trying to pass the time a little bit. And then you hear this noise behind me, a little snap. And I turn my head to look back behind me, and there's Holyfield. I just freaking blew it. I could have shot Holyfield. And I'm such a freaking idiot. It's 11 o'clock. Been slow the last hour and a half, 2 hours. So I was leaned up against the tree, facing the other direction, reading on my phone. And I would look up from the phone every once in a while, look around me and scan and make sure there was nothing. Well, reading, I hear a little crunch behind me, and I turn my head to look. And a deer bounds away from 20 yards away. It was him. Holyfield was freaking 20 yards away. And he spooked. He saw me. He ran off. Started to blow. I just had my chance at Holyfield, and I completely screwed it up, because I am an absolute idiot. God, son of This was just such a low moment. I had sunk so much time and energy into this deer, into this hunt, and to blow it like that, it was kind of emotionally devastating. So I knew that he wasn't going to show back up in this spot now after having seen me right there. So after an hour or so of kind of collecting myself, I moved back up towards the front of the property again, thinking, if anywhere, again, following the does during the rut. That was kind of my whole strategy this time of the year, was doe bedding areas in the morning, doe feeding areas in the evening. So I moved back up to this section, and there he was again. Unfortunately though, as he'd done on past hunts, he stayed back on the neighbors in that cover, bumping does around, following him around. I couldn't get him to come out into the food source by where I was at. So the next day I decided to just kind of try to reset myself. I went to Ohio, went to spend some time with my hunting buddies down there, just wanted to have a good time, wanted to get back to having fun. And I'm glad I did that, because my pal Furter ended up killing a buck in Ohio. I got to share that with him. It was a great time, one of my best experiences of the whole hunting season. So Now I return and I'm hunting again November 10th, and I'm spending most of my time now at this point focused towards that back half of the property again, because that's where more of these sightings had been. So I set up, I ended up seeing him that first night come out into a food source following a doe. The next morning I went back to another bedding area. This is what I thought was probably the best bedding area in that spot where I'd been seeing some of those bucks chasing does. Got set up downwind of it in a new stand I put up this past summer, and first thing in the morning I hear grunting coming my way. Here comes Holyfield through that thick stuff, headed right towards my one shooting lane I have into the thick stuff, but he stayed just far enough back that he didn't enter the lane. So that lane was cut to about 35 yards. He was back at 40. I couldn't get a shot at him, but I watched him, right there within range. So close, but not quite close enough. Fast forward a few hours later, here he comes again chasing a doe out of that thick brush at about 65 yards, but of course couldn't get a shot there either. So I continue seeing him. Fast forward now, I think another day or two later, I'm back on the other side of that bedding area. I hunted there in the morning, saw a bunch of bucks, but didn't see him. But that night, I watched him come out into this back cornfield following some does late that evening. That brings us to November 14th. I've now seen Holyfield come out into this cornfield with does on the 10th and the 12th. So on November 14th, I said, okay, for the evening hunt, I'm going to be set up right in that spot that you could intersect him coming through this cornfield. And that's what I did. And lo and behold, there he was. But just like, almost all the other encounters I had with him this year, he was just out of range. And the next day was gun season. I hunted the opening day, didn't see him. And then, as the story goes, throughout the rest of the hunting season, I never saw him again. Didn't get another trail camera picture of him again. He just completely went ghost mode. And I thought for sure he got killed. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this series and a few times already this year, I did find his shed antler this February, so he survived. And there's a good chance now he'll be back for 2018. So what did I learn from all this? Well, I think first and foremost, do not lose your focus during the rut and play on your phone, because you can blow your best opportunity of the year. That was a tough lesson to learn. I also found something that you hear a lot about, which is that these mature bucks tend to become less and less daylight active, and that's kind of obvious, but that definitely happened with Holyfield. I saw him a ton in October and December back in 2015 and 16, but now in 2017, zero sightings of him in October or December. Nothing but that 14-day window, I guess a little bit in October 31st through November 14th. That was the only time period I got daylight pictures or sightings of him. So he really cut down on how much he moved during those time periods. And I think back to my earlier point, I'm not going to be as dependent this year on that front food plot system. I'm definitely doing things to try to make that better, to try to make sure that's attractive. But I now realize that there's this huge opportunity towards the back of the property in those doe bedding areas. So I'm planning on doing more work this year to improve those and to improve my stand setups there. So I've got a good place to be with different wind directions to be hunting those mornings in early November. And then finally, I just want to make sure that I get back to focusing on the fun of it all. Last year I was so obsessed, I was so dead set on trying to get this one single deer that I allowed it to get to my head. I was losing sleep over this deer. I was getting really stressed out over this deer. I was canceling other plans, not going on other trips, just pushing everything else aside except for this one deer. And it led to me at times losing some of the enjoyment. I was too focused on the end goal, and I lost the enjoyment of the process. And that's something I don't want to do. So I know I'm always going to, get really, I get stressed, I get excited, I get really amped up about this stuff, and that's normal. I'm never going to change that completely, but I do want to try to maintain that focus on fun. I'm not going to live and die with this one single goal, and I'm going to go hunt other places. I'm going to go hunt other deer, and I'm just going to let things, happen how they might. So I'm going to try my best. I'm going to work hard, but we're going to let the chips fall where they may, and just have fun this year.